All right. So, so we are going to talk about Nehemiah 6 and 7 today for y'all's lessons on Sunday and Monday, the 27th and 28th. Um, and this is, we get to see the wall complete this week. But as I will say shortly, the work is far from done. So we're going to get going. So the text I'm going to preach on is starts in chapter 6, verse 15, and goes through chapter 7, verse 4. That's the text I'm going that I'll read on Sunday, which includes the finishing of the wall and the appointing of the new officials over Jerusalem. And but there's some things that happened before that that need to be unpacked a little bit. So so we talked about in chapters 4 and 5 how there were internal struggles and there were external struggles, and it felt like, okay, we got through, Nehemiah. Chapter 5 ends with Nehemiah going, look at how I didn't take the governor's portion, and out of my generosity I fed all of these people. And yet the Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem and all those folks won't be denied just yet. And so they come back with letters, or with 4 requests to have Nehemiah come off the wall and go and meet together in one of the villages in the plain of Ono. Um, Geographically, it's about 20 miles from Jerusalem. It's right on the border of Judah, so it would be at the edges of Nehemiah's territory. And if he had gone there, then it would probably be a day and a half or 2 days of a journey to get there. And depending on how long the meeting would have lasted, and I use meeting in quotes because that's not what they really wanted to do. Um, he could have been gone from the work for about a week, or at least the majority of a week. And so there, Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, and the rest of the enemies realize that the wall is being built. There's no gaps left in it, even though they haven't set up the doors. So they say in verse 2, come and let us meet together in one of the villages. They intended to do me harm. So I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it to come down to you? So they send 4 times, come and meet us, come and meet us, come and meet us, come and meet us. And then each time he answers in the same way. And then the 5th time, Sanballat sends a servant with an open letter in his hand. And we have the text of this letter in verses 6 and 7 and 6 and 7. Yeah. It says, it is reported among the nations, and Geshem also says it, that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are building the wall. And according to this report, you wish to become their king. You have also set up prophets to proclaim in Jerusalem concerning you, there is a king in Judah. And now it will be reported to the king according to these words. So come, therefore, and let us confer together. So, so the 5th time that Sanballat reaches out, he has this letter. It's an open letter, and basically that means that it was public information. It means that it was meant for other people to read, and for other people to hear what's in there and read it if they could read, or hear it being read if they couldn't read. And basically, what it says is that it's trying to undermine Nehemiah's intent in rebuilding the wall, and spinning it in such a way that says the Jews want to rebel. That's why they're building a wall around themselves, and then they're going to install Nehemiah as king, in opposition to Artaxerxes in Persia. And he's gone so far as to set up prophets who will proclaim it, therefore making it official. And so they're like, okay, we'll come and let's meet together and we'll figure this out. He says in verse 8, no such thing as you say have been done. You are inventing them out of your own mind, for they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work and it will not be done. So in this moment of these rumors, these lies, this deception being cast about around Nehemiah and his purposes and the Jews and their purposes, he doesn't engage. He doesn't come off the wall. He doesn't engage with what they're doing. He simply dismisses it out of hand. He says, you are inventing them out of your own mind. There's no truth to them. And he understands, he discerns very quickly that this is now the second time he's discerned. He discerned that they wanted to do him harm by pulling him off the wall. And the second time is they want to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work. So he's discerned this multiple times. And now he says at the end of verse 9, he prays, but now, O God, strengthen my hands, because he knows that the work is still in front of them. And so these 5 attempts to pull him off the wall all fail. And they're an example of Nehemiah being dedicated to the work that he's been called to do, and faithful to discern and listen to the Spirit telling him, this is no good, you don't need to be involved in this. But that's still not enough. Verses 10 through 14 show one more opportunity for the enemies to try to get Nehemiah distracted. So they go into Shemaiah. They go to Shemaiah, who was apparently a prophet, and confined to his house for some reason. And they get him to tell Nehemiah, or send word to Nehemiah, to meet together in the house of God within the temple. That's the key phrase there, within the temple. And let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, tonight they are going to come. They are coming to kill you. So he's inviting Nehemiah to come and go inside the temple, which was not permitted for a layperson to go inside the temple proper. He could go on the Temple Mount, he could go in certain places, but he could not go in the temple proper because he was not a priest. And in doing so, if he did that, it would actually be upon, the wrath of God to, come down on him at that point. So that's what he would be risking if he went in there. So again, verse 11, he says, should a man like me run away? Would a man like me go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in. So he's not coming down off the wall. He's not going to go meet him, even though he's some kind of friend of his. Verse 12 says, I perceived and saw that God had not sent him at all, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He'd been bribed to do it. And to intimidate me, to make me sin by acting in this way, so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. And then he prays again in verse 14. He says, remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. So, all right. So again, they're trying to distract him. They're trying to bring him off the wall, get him away from the work, so that the people go, hey, where's Nehemiah going? Maybe if he's going off the wall, then we'll just, stop working for a little while, and then the progress halts. And if he, if he goes off to the plains of Ono, he could be gone for a week. And then given the fact that it only took, 52 days, 7 days would have been, at a big chunk of time that would have been away from the project, and probably slowed it down and or stopped it completely, which again is what the enemies wanted. So they keep picking at him. They started with the Jews and tried to make them afraid, and now they're going after Nehemiah. and it still doesn't work. So, all right, I'll stop there to see what questions you might have about that particular section.
Just a comment. As you were going through your discussion of at least the 1 through 12, you brought up discerned. He discerned this and he discerned that.
Okay.
In the commentary that I was looking at for this, it really went off on discernment and talked a lot about discernment and how he, by discerning that, he was able to not let them distract him from God's work. And then also discernment gave Nehemiah focus. He knew what God wanted him to do, and he did it.
Right.
So that discernment, it seemed to be a big deal, at least in another commentary, not only your comments, but another commentary.
Yeah. Yes, I mean it's emphasized in the fact that he is he's Nehemiah always comes back to praying, over and over again, and we'll see it again and again. That it's not he's not quick to react. He takes his time and he looks around and he goes, okay, what's really going on here? And that's that whole discernment piece for me. He sees what they're trying to do. He sees that they're trying to distract him. They're trying to make the people afraid. They're trying to get under our skin, through whether it's through direct confrontation or whether it's through indirect, the lies in the letter, that kind of thing. And he's able to take that step back and go, this is not right. And so again, for me, it goes all the way back to the beginning of the book, where his heart is just broken for the plight of Jerusalem, and then spends that extended amount of time praying, and then from there on, the Spirit of God is right there with him. Gives him favor with Artaxerxes, and the traveling there, and the people give him all the supplies, and then he gets there and he walks around, and then he tells them, and they're all like, yes, let's go, and on and on and on. So yes, that Golden Gay hits on that quite a bit in his comments as well, that discernment piece was able to keep him on the wall and keep the project moving forward. All right, what else about those first 14 verses, anything?
I think I'm okay.
All right. Okay, so the next section is my particular text for my message, where the wall is finished on the 25th day of the month of Elul, in 52 days. So I did some back calculations, and so it's basically the project took place basically between mid-July and mid-September. And one of the commentaries I read, they tagged Elul as October. So I went to my Jewish, I have a website that I go to. Hold on, let me pull it up right here. It's called jewishvirtuallibrary.org. And I was like, well, I'll just go to the sources and see what they say. And so I typed in the calendar, and let's see. And when I did that, they said that Elul is August to September. And there it is. Yeah. I'm going to share my screen real quick. so you can see it. Yeah. So, so the Jewish year starts in the month of Nisan, which is March and April. This is when Passover is. And so this is when in Nehemiah chapter 2, that's when he approaches Artaxerxes. So if he approaches Artaxerxes in March or April, then, or right around March, because it was the first, let me just go back. So in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, this is 2:1. That's when he tells them about the plight of Jerusalem. The book opens with in the month of Kislev, which is November, December, so it's in the winter time. And so then he spends that time praying. So he's prays for about 3 months, and then in March, then he tells Artaxerxes about what's going on. And then if he leaves pretty much, right after that, then it's a 4-month journey from Susa to Jerusalem. So that would put him in Jerusalem right in July, early part of July. And then he would have got, he spends 3 days, and then he's like, okay, we're going to get going. So that time frame of mid-July to mid-September fits, if I've done my math correctly. So again, the you could figure out what day it is on the Jewish calendar, but on the Gregorian calendar, it's a little harder that way. It's I did the math. It's like the 3rd of Av is when they would have started. So that would have been in mid-July. Just depends on how. Yeah, the 3rd of Av, and then finishing on the 25th day of Elul. So anyway, just fun little Jewish stuff there for you.
What was the name of that site again?
It's jewishvirtuallibrary.org. And you can basically type in whatever topic you want to know about in the Jewish faith, and they have an article on it. They have an extensive hyperlink, inter-hyperlink site. So like if you have a question about like Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, then you can go to the calendar and see where it is, and they have like you can even, they have the next 3 years worth of dates in the Jewish calendar coming up, in the festivals, and they've got it lined out, and then with the Gregorian equivalent. So, and you can see it. It's interesting, obviously the Jewish calendar is based on the lunar year, so I added up, like the screen I just had up for you had all the days of the months. Hey Don. And I added them up, and there's 11 days. It's 11 days short of our 365-day solar year. And so they have this crazy complicated formula to make up for those 11 days. And every what is it? Oh man, it was like they have a couple of months that have either 29 or 30 days, depending on where the feast falls and the Sabbath. And then they have a set number of, like, the 3rd, 5th, they're on a 19-year, it's on a 19-year cycle. And they have these specific years within that cycle that have an extra month to make up for the days, an extra 29 days. And so that over the course of that 19-year cycle, they stay on on pace with the solar calendar. And
Not
they
at all
even,
convoluted.
oh, they have this they have a disclaimer that says you can calculate this out if you want, but the math is incredibly hard, and there's a computer program that'll run the algorithm for you and
do
figure it
it.
out, for the next millennia or whatever. And I was just like, oh wow, that's, I thought leap year was crummy. But anyway, add an extra day, add an extra month, it's like 10 times within a span of 19 years they add an extra month. And I was just,
Wow.
oh, it's like, all right, is this the year we have the extra month? I don't know. But it's like it's the month of Adar, and they have Adar 1 and they have Adar 2. And so Adar is February and March. And so Adar 2 is let's see. Yeah, they says we don't particularly recommend you trying to figure out the mathematics involved in it. So anyway, but yeah, there's Adar, and then there's Adar 2 that they add. That's the month that they add if there's an extra. So it's right before the beginning of, it's right at the
Wonder
end.
what they do with births of children. If you're born in Adar 2 and then
right,
for 19 years you don't have a
Yeah,
birthday.
well, you have your birthday every every few years, I guess.
Yeah,
There's let's see.
worse than leap years.
Mm-hmm. No, that's not the one I want. Well, I can't. Oh, here we go. This one. Yeah, I can't find it. If I find it, I'll send it to you. It's they had it all listed out. It's like the crazy. It's like, why pick those numbers? Why not every other year? Or I guess it's the math that makes it work. Anyway, so again, in the 52 days, they finish the work on the wall, and the enemies hear of it, and all the nations around them are afraid and fell greatly. The NRSV says, and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that the work had been accomplished with the help of our God. And so they basically their face is downcast because they see that God is working on the side of the Jews to help them accomplish this incredible feat of rebuilding those walls. And then there's verses 17 through 19, which I'm going to take separately. I'm going to jump to the beginning of chapter 7, and then I'll come back to 17 through 19, because it seems out of sequence. And a couple of commentators made a note of that it seemed out of sequence and probably should have come after verse 4, but we'll just set it aside for a second. So 7:1 says, now when the wall had been built and I had set up the doors and the gatekeepers, the singers and the Levites had been appointed, I gave my brother Hananiah charge over Jerusalem along with Hananiah, not that their names are really close or anything, the commander of the citadel, for he was a faithful man and feared God more than many. And I said to them, he gives them specific instructions about the gates, that they're not to be opened until the sun is hot. While the gatekeepers are still standing guard, let them shut and bar the doors. Appoint guards from among the inhabitants of Jerusalem, some at their watchposts and others before their own houses. So as the wall is finished, they've put the doors and the gates all in. So everything's done now as far as the rebuilding is going. He says, now we've got the gatekeepers, the singers, the Levites, And so now Hanani and Hananiah are going to be the two officials in Jerusalem. One's Nehemiah's brother, and one's a friend of his that is a faithful and God-fearing man. And he gives them instructions to keep the gates closed until the sun is hot. And there's a couple of different there's a couple of translation issues, and probably there's some potential scribal errors depending on which commentator you read in this particular place, because the Hebrew is a little difficult, but there was something about, I think Golden Gate had the whole idea of that something about the afternoon siesta. I was like, wait a minute, siesta is a Spanish word, but I was like, wait a minute. But then I was like, do Jewish people take naps in the afternoon? I didn't know that. But there's something about midday that that happens in Jewish culture, and or at least in this moment, that Nehemiah is trying to draw attention to, that you know, he doesn't want the gates open while people are napping or resting, or perhaps paying less attention than they normally would. And so but he's still giving them specific instructions about how to do that, and says, you know, that guards need to be among the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and they need to be at their watch posts or in front of their own houses. So they may have specific places that they go to be on guard, or they may, you know, be near their home paying attention to what's going on. However, verse 4 says, the city was wide and large, but the people within it were few, and no houses had been built. Now, we do know that there's reference to houses being built, or houses existing, because in the list in chapter 3, there's people who rebuilt the section of the wall near their house. So there's so it's possible that he's talking about the fact that it just hasn't been repopulated yet, and there's not new houses built. Again, whether that's it's not a make or break kind of deal for me, but what he's getting at is that the city is big, and from the exile, there haven't been it's not as large population wise of a city as it was prior to the exile. So so that will lead then to some later actions in the rest of the book to help repopulate the city of Jerusalem. But the main idea is that they've finished the wall, and now people are standing guard, and they're having to do so sort of on a skeleton crew, because there's not as many people as there were before, and they're just having to probably cover more geographical area than they would, say, if there were 2 or 3 times as many people present to do that as well. Does that make sense? Okay. So then to 17 to 19, that last little few verses of chapter 6. So it says, moreover, this is what the NRSV says, moreover, in those days, the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and Tobiah's letters came to them. For many in Judah were bound by oath to him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, son of Erah, and his son Jehohanan had married the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berechiah. Also they spoke of his good deeds in my presence and reported my words to him, and Tobiah sent letters to intimidate me. All right. So 4 and 5, 4 had the external threats, 5 had the internal threats, now 6 had the external threats again, and now at the end of chapter 6, we see the internal threats once again, sort of mixed with external threats. Because here's Tobiah, the Ammonite, the guy from Moab on the other side of the Jordan River, who has intermarried with the Jews in Jerusalem. He's married the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berechiah, who was listed in the family listing in chapter 3 of who was rebuilding the wall. And so he is, or that's who his son had married, but he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah. So he's intermarried in these families, and his son is intermarried in these families. And so now they're bound not only through marital relations, but it looks like they're bound by some kind of commercial interests as well, and business dealings and things like that. And so the people are speaking. They spoke of his good deeds in my presence, and reported my words to him. This is verse 19. So they're exchanging letters back and forth with Tobiah. And now they're coming to Nehemiah and saying, look at what a good guy Tobiah is. And I'm wondering if Nehemiah is doing like a facepalm kind of deal, like, oh, do you not realize what's going on here? Are you not paying attention to what's happening here? And I wonder just how offended he really is, that they're like, oh, he's a great guy. He's my brother-in-law, and he's, such and such, and he's a good guy. He's a good dad to his kids or whatever. And it's like, wait a minute. And so, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is the last part of the verse, which says, and they reported my words to him. They were trading, they were telling insider information. They were, they were giving away the secrets about the building project and what he was doing and all this kind of stuff. They're giving it away to Tobiah. And so Tobiah uses that, send letters to intimidate Nehemiah. And so there's this internal struggle. One commentator I read said that, again, the internal struggles show up in the upper echelons of the society. The wealthier people seem to be oblivious to the fact that the people that they're in cahoots with are the very people who are trying to undermine them as a people group. So a couple of the commentators I read made a deal about that 17 through 19 could probably come after 7:4, but because it seems to fit better together after verse 16. But we have it as it is right now, and we'll deal with that. So it seems a bit of an interjection, but again, not a deal breaker for me. All right. What questions y'all have on that section? I think you're muted, Gary.
Okay, all right now?
You're good.
Okay. Sorry about that. Where he talks about the sun being hot, and I'm trying to find where that is. That in 7?
It is. It's 7:3.
Okay, in Gooding Gay's book, he says the gates shall not open while the sun is hot. In the New King James Version, it says the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot.
Mm-hmm.
That's different times.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, the way that Golden Gate translates it, he says, the gates of Jerusalem shall not open while the sun is hot. Let's see. But yeah, those are.
Which makes your comment about them having something going on at lunch make sense, the siesta type thing.
Right.
It doesn't make sense from the New King James.
Right, nor the NRSV. The NRSV reads the same way as NKJV. So
Okay.
let me pull up my original language source and see what. NIV says not to be opened until the sun is hot. So again, that goes with. Then it said the New Living Translation says, "Do not leave the gates open during the hottest part of the day."
Well, that goes with Golden Gate then.
Right. ESV says, "Let not the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot." So that goes with NRSV and New King James. Let's see. All right, let me go to
the commentaries I saw said that the reason for the opposite way of what Golden Gate's talking about is that he wanted to be sure all the people were up and around and alert, so that when they opened the gate, they could be aware of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they were working late and so they would sleep late. I don't know, but
It's
that was. But doesn't your question number 7 say until the sun is hot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it does.
Which is not the Golden Gate way.
Correct.
So that's okay.
That's based on the NRSV.
Okay.
Let's see. Look at the.
Yeah, because I've got it written here that the big thing was to prevent the enemy from making a surprise attack before most of the people were even up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Does he ever say what version of the Bible he uses?
He does his own translation.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
I mean, so I'm looking at the, I use BibleHub.com as my original language source, and just looking at the way that they translate the original language, it says, "And I said to them, do not let the gates of Jerusalem be open until the sun is hot."
Okay.
So let's go to, so yeah, Golden Gate talks about this. Yes, let's see. Let's see what Kidner says again. Yeah, Kidner says the Hebrew of verse 3a is obscure. While it obviously speaks of extra precautions, these may refer either to the midday siesta, the NEB, he quotes as not to be left open during the heat of the day. So that, again, that goes with Golden Gate's translation. Or more probably to the morning and evening routine, directing that the gates should be opened late and closed early. So I don't know. It's so that may come up depending on people's translation that they're using.
Yeah. I'm already thinking of someone.
You're welcome, Sandy.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Henry.
Thank
I'll
Nehemiah.
just give him your phone number.
No, he seems to know. Pastor Dean knows more about it than I do.
Oh my goodness.
He's got all those good references.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's
Oh,
yeah.
Laws.
You know, that's
Can
you know
I
that
ask
that right
who
there.
is this person that we are concerned about?
Oh,
I think you know, right?
yeah, I do.
Initials J.
Uh-huh.
E? Yeah.
JB. Yeah, yeah.
JB. JB. I'll have to
Mhm.
think on that one.
Right. Yeah.
It's female, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, the long and the short of it is this that verse right there, there's probably a dissertation that could be written on that verse.
Yeah.
And you know,
Evidently.
somebody could get their PhD and
Yeah.
struggle through that for us, and you know, in the grand scheme of things, it
Does
doesn't
it really matter?
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't
No.
really matter. I mean,
No.
he's obviously making some instructions about the gates. I would err on the side of him wanting to be cautious. Nehemiah being giving the instructions to be cautious of the people, to be paying attention to what's happening while the gates are open, whether that's in the morning or whether it's in the evening. I mean, he's already done that in the end of chapter 4, where he said, you know, no more foot traffic in and out during the building project because of, you know, you can't really account for who's coming in and out. It's not like a turnstile or something like that where they're checking IDs or whatever. It's not the American Airlines Center or anything, or the airport. So he's already, you know, erred on the side of caution as far as that goes. So it makes sense to me that he would err on the side of caution, even now that the building project is done. And again, given that he's about to say that the city was wide and large and the people within it were few, and so it's like, why would they open themselves up to unnecessary attacks or unnecessary infiltration? So anyway, but he puts Hananiah and Hananiah in charge of that. So anyway, he's like, y'all deal with that. Okay. So then the last part of the rest of chapter 7 is basically a redo of Ezra chapter 2 and the list of the returned exiles. God bless whoever you have read that section. No, out loud.
Give that as an assignment. Oh, Laws.
Right. But so at the end, I don't touch on this in my message, but starting in verse 70 through 73, you see it's past the census. And he says some of the heads of the ancestral houses contributed to the work. The governor, that's Nehemiah, gave to the treasury 1,000 derricks of gold, 50 basins, and 530 priestly robes. Some of the heads of ancestral houses gave into the building fund, and he lists the specifics there. And what the rest of the people gave, he lists the specifics there. So I did a quick calculation. I figured out how much a derrick is, and then figured out what that weight is in gold, and it's somewhere north of 100. And it's if I did the math right, it's about $180 million worth of gold right now.
Wow.
Like now that may be that may be adjusted for, that's the current value of gold per ounce. But so I did the weight and then I multiplied it by the current value of gold. But anyway, it's still, either way, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of value that's being placed, that's being invested back into the city. And so verse 73, so the priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the singers, some of the people, the temple servants, and all Israel settled into their towns. So, so this sort of begins to settle the building project. So now the people are settled. Again, at the beginning, or back towards the beginning of chapter 7, he says that it's wide and large, and there's not a whole lot of people there. But he's going to deal with that in where are we at here? Chapter 11 is when Nehemiah will deal with the fact that there are fewer people there. So there you go. So yes, God blessings on whoever you have read the second half of chapter 7.
Oh,
I think we were just going to put 3 dots.
Oh yes. And some other people were counted. Let's skip to verse 70.
Go back to Ezra and read it again if you need to.
Sure.
oh,
Yeah. Now, if you do read Ezra 2 and Nehemiah 7 in parallel with one another, there are a few differences.
There are differences. I understand.
But again, the commentaries that I read attributed those to scribal errors over the years, and the names being so close that one little vowel point gets a jot or a tittle somewhere gets off, and all of a sudden it's Shechaniah instead of Shemaniah or whatever. Okay. Well, all right. So, very good. All right, what else? Anything else on that particular section of chapter 7, or anything in 6 or 7 as a whole?
What are you thinking the answer to number 6, question number 6 is? About which of these is the most astounding aspect?
Mm-hmm. I think that all 3 of those answers are valid answers to what the most outstanding aspect is. And I'm more interested in hearing, having y'all have conversation around why they think one of those is versus another. Now, there may be additional answers on there. I'm sure there are. But I just gave those as,
I know I'll get them.
Sandy, to be a fly on the wall of your class.
I know it. Oh, laws.
If I could somehow just listen
and if
in.
if you knew the rest of the story, you'd really be. But I won't go into that because we're being recorded.
Right? Yes, I understand. Right.
So, anyway, so yeah, I think all 3 of those are outstanding aspects of the story, and can be made, and there can be valid arguments made for all 3 of them. And so.
Okay. So are you going to talk about something else now or not?
Oh, okay.
Sure. He is just so ready.
He's like, he's on it.
I want to know.
I want to know.
Discernment keeps me focused.
Oh my.
Look at there. We'll just start calling you Nehemiah.
Yeah.
All right.
By the way, Sandy, I had to apologize to him for calling Elishabib, because it turns out Elishabib was not a very nice guy.
Oh no.
He was corrupt in the end. If you get all the, is it 13? I think it's in 13.
Yeah.
You get there and it's like, oh, that's not nice.
That's not a nice guy.
Oops. Okay. So in the last couple of weeks, a couple of things have been rising in my spirit. One of them is that what I've sort of shared already, and sort of teed it up last week, and I'll tee it up, I kind of directly confront it in my message for Sunday, is that the work on the building was the easy part of this book and of this project of rebuilding the wall around Jerusalem. It's really the rebuilding the people and restoring the people that's the hard part. And so what will happen between the time that we finish this series, and actually we'll begin next week, will be an emphasis on rebuilding and restoring and reviving the people of Wiley United Methodist Church after 15 months of essentially being separated from one another for various reasons, COVID, water break, all that kind of stuff, social distancing whatsoever, so that we take the lessons of Nehemiah and apply them to our own lives, and how we go about attending to our own spirituality through scripture study, through prayer, through worship, through volunteering, and living out our faith. And so I'm going to just keep that theme going until we get back into the building. So that's going to be the thrust of what will happen from the basically the last week in July until we have our go time, and we have our first Sunday back in the building. Right now, everything is really up in the air as far as when we'll be back in the building. It's depending on who you talk to, and then how you compare that to the timelines of things arriving, materials we've purchased, and things that need to be constructed, things like that. We could be out of the building until the middle of August, perhaps even the end of August, depending on how you want to look at it. Again, just as there were factors that forced us apart, back March of last year, there are factors that are keeping us from coming back together in a full capacity, that are, some are construction related, and some are just the materials that, like our worship center chairs. We are not anticipating having those in our hands until the last week of August. Wow. Now, the reality is that if the building is finished, if the construction is complete, and the construction company says, you can be in here, then I'm going to invite y'all in, and you can bring camp chairs, or we'll pull out folding chairs and bring your own chair, and come on, we're going to do it. But we still have some lead times on some things arriving, as far as being fully up and running again. But it's still looking like, the early part of August to mid-August before even all that's finished up. So we still have, 1, 2, 3, at least 4 weeks that are going to be kind of this transition time where I'll spend time talking about rebuilding the people of Wiley United Methodist Church, and then we will have our everybody's back together kind of thing, and then we will launch into a new series. My initial thought was to have the series launch the Sunday after Labor Day, and that may still happen just based on timing of everything, but it's if we're able to be back in the building before then we'll do a big hurrah on our first Sunday, and then the next Sunday I'll kick off the new series and go from there. Whether and then just encompass, just deal with Labor Day at that point and not worry about it. I will. I am discerning through the texts that we will use for those interim weeks, and give those to you once I have them. But yeah, we could be in that interim period. I don't want to call it the intertestamental period because that's something completely different. But it'll be an interim period focused on rebuilding the people of Wiley United Methodist Church, so that not only paying attention to the fact that people have struggled spiritually in the last year and a half because of the separation. You know, the community aspect of church is truly a vital piece of that. And you know, it's not the same watching on your couch. It's not the same worshiping from afar. You know, and just for me, I mean, I get a kick out of you know, being with people. As much as of an introvert as I am, it's still Sunday morning is still the highlight of my week for me as a pastor, to be among the people. So, and I know there's a lot of folks who have struggled through this time, and I want to honor that and speak to that specifically, and spend some time dealing with that and building the folks back up, so that as we relaunch into the fall, then we hit the ground running and we're not like trying to trip over our feet and figure out how to do this thing again as we get up and running. I hope that makes sense.
I think I've asked before, but is there any way that you can serve communion? Give I don't know. I just keep getting that question, and I think it would help a lot of people.
I mean, the answer is yes, I can do that. Let me look at my calendar and see when we might be able to do that. Because you know, basically at this point we can do whatever we're comfortable with. Yeah, I'll send out, when I email y'all the video link for this, I'll send an idea of like what I'm thinking about and when that might be, so that we can let folks know. Because I know we've got 2 Sundays off from fellowship nights. And you know, we may be able to take advantage of that if need be. Because it might be odd on game night to have communion, but
yeah,
you know, you never know.
Yeah,
it might be really appropriate during mission night when everybody's hot and sweaty.
Yep.
So, well, let me think about that for a little bit, and then I'll get back with you. Look, I'm gonna get out my notebook and I'm gonna write it down so I don't forget. Very good. All right. What other questions do you have about 6 and 7 or anything related to Nehemiah as it stands right now? I will send the study guide for next week on Friday to you. So that way you'll have it ahead of everybody else getting it on Sunday. And that'll be for chapters 8 and 9. And that will be for Sunday, July 4th. Our buddy Ezra shows back up. Okay. All right. Seeing no questions, then I guess we'll be done for today. Again, as I say every week, I appreciate y'all very much for what you do, and how you lead in your groups and in our congregation. Gary, we're praying for you and your family about little Autumn. That's a terrible, terrible disease, and so we'll be praying for her and for her family. If you can, keep us in the loop on how that's progressing.
Do you know if did Phyllis Hubney come back home after she went in for that infection?
Yeah, she's home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I've got a question for you after we go off a recording about
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she went home after just maybe a day or so.
Went home on Sunday.
Yeah. But yeah, I've messaged with her about the funeral service on Saturday.
That's my question.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. All right. Well,
Okay. I'll get on off of here.